Twin Blades are one of the many weapon classes in Elden Ring. However, despite the variety of possible builds, I think they are condemned to being power stance bleed engines. In this video, I will be using every Twin Blade to defeat every Remembrance boss, including the DLC, while keeping the run mostly region locked to promote using a variety of builds. To start, I grabbed the Wet Blade to apply Asha Wars, then ran to the Dragonburnt Ruins and picked up my first Twin Blade, the Twin Blade. I proceeded to Moor Castle and grabbed the Pole Blade Talisman to increase the damage of the final hit and chain attacks. Seeing as I was doing this region locked, I also grabbed some smithing stones to get a few levels on the Twin Blade. I stealthily stole the strength tier and removed Alexander from this plane of existence for later. I continued with the usual early game pickups, getting the green turtle and the axe talisman to improve charge attack. I had gotten enough golden runes to level dexterity up to the required level and was finally able to wield the Twin Blade. After killing the Bleed Knight, I was ready and took on Margit. I've never really two-handed a single Twin Blade like this, so I was pleasantly surprised by how fluid the moveset is, and even with just charged and light attacks, it had great bleed buildup, in some cases bleeding after just one charged heavy. Apart from me playing like a baboon, Margit proved a good omen for the rest of the run. Before Godric, I was able to upgrade the Twin Blade again, and after getting my ankles broken, I was able to land a few charged attacks, which not only have good bleed, but also poise buildup, as I got a stance break before bleeding him into the second phase. His newly equipped Bad Dragon failed to scare me, as I easily took down the remainder of his health bar, winning on the second try, with the only hiccup being getting punished for charging heavy attacks. After entering a scary place, I slammed out the Cleanrot Knight with Bleed for the Winged Sword Insignia to boost my multi-hits. Since I was in Liurnia, I also grabbed the Miner's Bell Baron. For better damage scaling, I also went back to get the Iron Wet Blade from Godric Castle, as throughout this run I was constantly swapping my accessories and weapon affinity. I equipped the Dexterity tier and killed a giant dung beetle for a cold infused Asha War. I fought Loretta for extra runes and a head start on Ronnie's questline, which wasn't super hard, but the fight dragged on as my build hadn't really started to come together yet, so without bleed my damage wasn't great. But after ducking and dashing his swings, I was able to win. Moving to Raya Lucaria, I scooped up the Carrion Knight set as I was still running around in my soiled loincloth. Red Wolf was annoying as always, and it didn't help that he runs away before I can begin chaining attack. After experiencing some full moon fever, Renala went down easily, with the first phase being the longest part of the fight. In the second phase, I was able to stunlock her using bleeding staggers and melted her health bar to win. I leveled up, then killed an Erdtree avatar, which took a while without bleed for some of the elemental physic tier. Using my new talisman pouch, I equipped the charge attack talisman and upgraded the Twin Blade more. Ready to move into Altus, I poked and pricked Makar until he allowed my ascension where I immediately picked up the next Miner's Bell Bearing. Hoping to get an extra Gargoyle's Twin Blade, I killed the Path Gargoyle, but was met with disappointment. Finally, I obtained the next Twin Blade, the Knight's Twin Blade, from the Windmill Cult people, which is a little stronger than the regular one, having higher strength scaling and base damage. The main upside, however, was that I could finally power stance and begin melting bosses with statuses. I also got the Ritual Sword Talisman to increase my damage boosting repertoire. The Draconic Tree Sentinel is usually the first difficult boss in these runs. However, the strength of my Frost and Bleed Twin Blades easily overpowered his meager red lightning. I was also impressed by the damage output of grounded power stance attack. Skedaddling over to Godfrey, I two-handed the Twin Knight's Twin Blade with a quality attunement since ghosts can't be bled. With my recent power spike, I easily cut away his health bar and won. I got the Claw Talisman to improve jumping attacks, as well as the Raptor's Black Feathers, giving me 21% total damage boost to my jumping attacks. With my new setup in hand, I took on Morgott, who was destroyed by my Power Stance attack, and I took him down, only getting hit by his hiss when he entered the second phase. Now that I completed Altus, I was ready to enter Caelid, so I began by getting the second Sacred Scorpion Charm for any holy weapons later. Keeping in theme, I killed a Putrid Avatar for the stamina restoring tier. I exterminated Grail for more financial freedom, then took on O'Neill to begin Millicent's questline. At this point, my build was already very strong, but getting Millicent's Prosthesis, which is a stackable winged sword insignia, would make it even better. I summoned Millicent to help against the Godskin Apostle, Then to show my appreciation, I killed her and claimed my reward. The new build proved pretty strong against Azek, who granted me some rotted runes before Radon. I upgraded the Godskin Peeler dropped by the Apostle and equipped the Jar Shard to utilize the Black Flame Tornado Ash of War. The Ash of War on the Peeler wasn't quite as good as I hoped, probably due to it constantly getting interrupted, but the weapon was balanced overall and I quickly reached Radon's second phase. With the new bell bearing in hand, I took on bosses in Dragonbarrow to fund my mini weapons in need of upgrading. After buying all the smithing stones, I took out my clone to progress towards Valiant Guards. Now that I'd entered the Mountaintops, Eleonora appeared at the church in Altus, and I was able to get her pole blade, which was yet another twin blade for my stash. I went inside of a Virgin to grab some somber stones for the pole blade. Since I was having fun using it, I decided to stick with the Godskin Peeler for the gargoyles, as they're immune to bleed anyway. The Valiant Gargoyle fight is always really annoying, but luckily my build was strong enough to win without too many attempts. I was able to quickly kill the first gargoyle, preventing a 2v1, and chunked away the Twin Blade one's health to win. With my new Gargoyle's Twin Blade in hand, I equipped it and the Twin Knight, as they both scale well with strength and are my highest base damage options. I also took out the Black Blade Gargoyle, who went down quickly even without bleed, to get probably the worst Twin Blade, the Gargoyle's Black Blades. At this point, I was ready to try Eleonora's pole blade and respect it Renala to two-hand it. I picked up Seppuku and duplicated it for later. I was expecting Eleonora's pole blade to be really strong, however, it was failing to come close to killing Nile or other bosses. So I equipped the Peeler as well with a Frost Affinity, which is my classic Twin Blade loadout. With this new setup, I threw a few times, then won pretty easily, as my DPS was very good. However, looking back, half the battle was probably my lacking Vigor stat, as at this point it was comparable to my Stamina meter. Now that I gathered both halves of the Erdtree medallion, I could fight the Putrid Avatar in Consecrated Snowfields to get the Thorny Cracked here, which is yet another multi-hit attack boost. To further increase my attack power, I went through the Sewer Catacombs and fought Esker to pick up the Lord of Blood's Exaltation for a 20% damage boost after bleed occurs in my vicinity. After witnessing a suicide, I took on Sewer Mode, who is immune to bleed, but thanks to the amount of jump and chain attack boost, he quickly crumbled to my onslaught. At this point, I was ready to fully embrace the OP-ness of power stancing bleed-infused twin blades, so I respec for strength to use the Gargoyle and Twin Knights twin blades more effectively, then marched onto Fire Giant. The fight started well with my damage unsurprisingly being great, despite me waiting till mid-fight to use Seppuku for further bleed buildup. The second phase went less smoothly as I failed to start the fight with a stagger, and then had to run around chasing after him, which made it hard to get bleed proc. Eventually though, after almost being burned alive, I was able to win on the first try. The Godskin duo was, as to be expected, decimated by my twin blades and went down without putting up a fight. On the way to Malekith, I picked up a normal and somber dragon smithing stones. Then to progress towards Fortisax, I fought Fia's champions, which are usually really annoying, but apart from Lionel, they all died in 1 or 2 attacks. Since this is an all-remembrance run, I went down and teleported to the past to fight Placidusax. It was one of my least favorite fights because of how tedious it is. The start of the fight was pretty easy and relatively quick. With my jump attacks, I was able to do a big chunk of his health bar as he phase shifted. Once he went into the second phase, I was able to finish him off pretty quickly. Before getting any other bosses, I picked up some minor upgrades, and then fought the Noble to enter Mohg's lair, and took on the White Mask Invader for the Surgeon Mask to further boost my damage after bleed procs by another 20%. Moving on to Rykard, I wanted to stay true to the run, so I didn't use the Serpent Hunter. Despite not switching to heavy armor, I was able to completely melt his first phase even while being stunned by the lava. The second phase was a lot more annoying as he tends to act more aggressive and has much jankier hitboxes. Luckily, I was able to get a double bleed and frost proc, leading to 35,000 damage at once. However, after this, he begun to do the Firestorm Skull attack repeatedly and had basically become immune to bleed and frost. So I had to run around desperately chugging flasks to save my life until I could eventually whittle him down for the win. Despite the issues at the end, I was very happy with this fight as it's rare to be able to beat Rykard without the Serpent Hunter, let alone with relative ease. I feel this fight definitely proves the overwhelming strength of Twin Blades as a weapon class. Malekith is usually a hard fight for me, but he was unavoidably another victim of my blood-soaked blades. I collected the Fingerslayer blade to progress Ranni's questline and unlock the inverted tower, which allowed me to access her corpse at Liurnia's Divine Tower, where I eluded the Curse Mark of Death in order to fight Fortisax. It was easy, but I kept getting staggered by the lightning everywhere. Regardless, with some flask abuse, I won first try. Moog was in fact a boss that I fought. Now that I had access to the DLC, I collected some early Skadu fragments and rushed to R'Lana as I wanted to progress as fast as possible to Enir Elim to obtain the Euphoria, a legendary twin blade with holy scaling. Despite being bad, my damage was still good, so R'Lana only took a few tries and was just a matter of finding the right opportunities to be aggressive and build up bleed. Once she entered her second phase, it was already over for her and I won easily. Now that I could move into the area past R'Lana's castle, I was able to get back the Black Steel Twin Blade, which is a mediocre weapon with partial holy damage. This is an all Twin Blades run though, so it would be used eventually. I decided to use the Gargoyle's Black Blade's Twin Blade for Estelle, as I'm pretty sure he has high status resistance, so I figured I might as well use something without bleed. The Twin Blade was very underwhelming, as it is a somber weapon, meaning it can't be infused with affinities or Ash of Wars, but its innate Ash of War fails to make up for it, as instead of getting something cool like Destined Death like the actual gargoyles, it just has the regular spinning slash. Regardless, I was pretty high level at this point and the Twin Blade was +9, so with a little patience, I took Estelle down.
Five minutes later.
Gaining access to Ranni's Cathedral, I fought Adula, which was a standard fight with the Gargoyle's Black Blades continuing to be mediocre. Luckily with my talismans and other buffs, my damage was still decent. I decided to use the Black Steel Twin Blade for Golden Hippo, which was alright despite not opting for a bleed build. My damage was pretty good on him, and the main issue was just how much damage Golden Hippo outputs, but luckily for me, my Twin Blades won the DPS race. Mesmer is weak to statuses, so I went back to my Cold Peeler and Eleanor's Whole Blade setup. However, despite him usually being too frail to put up a fight and not much of an issue for me, in this run I struggled for an eternity trying to beat him, essentially having to relearn the whole fight. After about a dozen attempts, I died right before his second phase. And come a dozen more, I nearly killed him before dying to his onslaught of Slippery Serpent. After a few more deaths though, I finally locked in and got onto a winning attempt. To start, I just dodged his attacks until he paused long enough for me to respond with a jump attack, which is the main strategy I had for the fight. Continuing this pattern, after a few more of his combos, I hit him into the second phase. At the start of it, I got a stagger, and with a riposte, took a big chunk of his health bar. I made sure to run back after, as the main source of death was staying too close when he started the multi-snake attack. With that, I just dodged his sporadic snake charges, whittling him down until I won. With all of my previous attempts, I'd gotten a lot better at dodging them, so it wasn't too hard. The last boss blocking my path to Enir Elim was Ramana, who is pretty weak in general, and with the fire damage of the pole blade, she took good damage. I dealt with her first phase quickly and without much issue. Near the start of the second phase, I got a stagger and bleed proc. Annoyingly, she becomes much more evasive, but after some cardio, she went down. No. I trekked through the hidden path down to reach the room with the Euphoria, the final and strongest twin blade of the run. I was pretty excited as I'd never used it before, so I quickly got it to plus 10 and respect for face scaling. After adding the holy tier to the physic, I swapped out my jump and bleed accessories for the pole blade and ritual sword talismans. I took on the divine beast dancing lion, which has pretty high holy resist, so I was initially worried about the damage, but despite his resistances, the Euphoria melted his health as it gains holy damage and an overall buff as you chain attacks, which will make it glow more. The more it glows, the stronger its Ash of War is. Moving further into the DLC, I beat up the Dragon Man and got the two-handed sword talisman to replace the ritual sword. I sucked on a finger for Count Ymir, then took on Gaius, who went down after a few attempts, as thanks to the last run, I'm now pretty good at the fight. It also didn't hurt that the Euphoria was shredding through his health bar. Afterwards, I fought the Erdtree avatar, who I find to be pretty annoying and difficult with his oddly delayed thorn attacks rising up from the ground. I didn't have much of a strategy for the fight and just tried to minimize my whiffs and was able to take him down in a few attempts. I once again slimed out the Dragon Man so I could make it to Bale through Jagged Pass. Bale wasn't actually very hard, as with the Euphoria's damage output, I was able to quickly get into the second phase by beating up his stump, and with some chasing of Bale and chugging my flasks, I was able to win. After ringing another finger bell, I decided to baptize the putrescent knight, who is very weak to holy, although I still managed to almost throw the fight. Continuing my steamroll through the bosses, I first tried Matir, although it took a minute to get into the flow of the fight, as I almost died a few times towards the start. I took out Jory, who isn't too bad when you go for backstabs, then made my way to Midra. Midra has a decent amount of holy resist, so the Euphoria wasn't going quite as crazy as usual, but with lots of rolling through his swipes, I was able to take him down steadily and come out on top. I also went back and put the Ancestor Spirit out of its misery. and showed Gideon who's boss. The next enemy to experience Euphoria was Horaloo, who is always a good fight, and in this run, it was no exception. I killed him relatively quickly and took him down first try with a clean fight. Loretta got easily melt maxed by the strength of my build, paving the way to Melania. I nearly won on my first try, as Melania really wasn't too bad since Twin Blades are pretty quick weapons and can micro stagger her. Plus the Euphoria has a crazy damage output. However, I completely locked out after the first attempt, and it took nearly another hour before I won. The main issue was just me being bad, plus the somewhat short range of the Twin Blade. The winning attempt started off well with me barely getting hit, and I just played patiently and tried not to get greedy as you normally would with Melania. However, at around half health, she went for a waterfowl right on top of me and my life flashed before my eyes. But luckily, I was able to just barely survive it, and after that, the rest of the phase went smoothly. Starting the second phase, I decided to immediately get hit to one shot and have to run around while I frantically tried to heal. Before then instantly getting hit again. Luckily, I was able to recover my tempo and lock back in for the last bit of the fight and take her down. The last base game boss in my way was Radagon and Elden Beast, who both greatly resist Holy. However, feeling like it was probably time for a challenge and trusting in the Euphoria, I decided not to switch my build. Despite the Holy resist, I trudged onwards and continued to perform well, with Radagon going down quickly and me only needing 2 heals. Elden Beast itself wasn't difficult, but the Holy Resistance was a big damper on the speed of the fight. With enough patience though, I was able to win after a relatively long fight. The final boss remaining was Promise Consort Radahn, but more frustratingly, I would have to beat the Leda gank fight to access his arena. I definitely didn't want to be using Holy for Radahn, so I swapped back to the Power Stance Strength lead build, which was able to take down the invaders after a few attempts. Promise Consort Radahn is arguably the hardest fight in the game, but with this setup, he wasn't much of a threat. I easily tore through his health bar, which combined with me only getting hit a handful of times, led to a quick fight to end out the run. Overall, this run was very fun, and I definitely have a greater appreciation for Twin Blades as a weapon class and for their different applications outside of bleed power stancing. Although I think that is still undeniably the strongest aspect of their builds. The Euphoria was super fun to use and very strong. It's not exactly a hot take, but it's definitely become one of my favorite weapons. I'm thinking about trying to stream the next run to add live commentary to the boss fights. With all that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment with a challenge or video suggestion.